Good afternoon. Before we start, I'm going to call up Jerry. He has an announcement. This is Jerry Riley.
On your tables, I've put flyers for this. We're having a ghost walk at West Virginia Independence Hall on Saturday, October 18th, and we're having two sessions, 6:30 and 7:30. And I was the site manager at Independence Hall from 1996 to 2006. And if there's a place that's haunted, West Virginia Independence Hall is haunted. We've had things happen there, and we have other people have said things that have happened there. So we're just going to take people around and tell them the different stories that people have told and experienced there, things falling over, lights going out, seeing things, noises, all that kind of stuff. So the tickets are $10 a person, and the information's on there, where to call and everything. So hopefully you'll be interested and come. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. I don't know if it's more haunted than, we're currently sitting in a former cemetery, so. You saw Poltergeist, right? Okay, if you would turn off your cell phones, please, at this time. On Tuesday next, we have two poetry programs in a row, so I'll see some of you on the 28th, I guess. On the 14th, Porch Poems, featuring several poems, including Kirk Judd, Cheryl Denise, who's been here before, Susan Conley Holstein, and Cheryl Runyon Weigel. And then on the 21st, our friend Mark Harshman, the poet laureate of our great state, returns with guest Richard Haig, who's a very intriguing character. Don't miss that one on the 21st. And on the 28th, Sean Wells will be back to do another spooky radio show. This one is, since Guillermo del Toro is doing his Frankenstein, we're doing our Frankenstein here as a radio play called Lunch with the Modern Prometheus. So that'll be the 28th on Halloween week. Today we're going to have a music program for you. The gentleman's name is Sean Gaskell. I'm going to let him do the rest of his own introduction, but here he is. Here's Sean.
Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for coming out today. My name is Sean Gaskell, and I'm here to share with you the West African Kora. The Kora, it's a 22-string harp, and it has 2 rows of 11 strings that are on either side of the bridge. A bridge that's held there by the tension of all the strings. And I learned how to play the Kora over the course of 4 visits to West Africa, to the countries of Gambia and Senegal. So most of the songs that I'll share with you are ones that I learned directly from my teachers over there. And then between the songs, I'll be sharing with you some of the background and the history, so you'll get to learn about how it's built and also the people who play the kora over there and the types of events that they use it at. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the song that I wrote, and I say that with a grain of salt, because none of this music is written down. There's no sheet music for it, and there's a lot of improvisation that happens during it. The word Somada comes from the Mandinka language, and I learned to speak Mandinka in Gambia thanks to the generosity of my host family there. And so Somada means morning, like the time of day. And I wrote this song about 10 years ago at a time when I was getting up very early for work, which was to be doing trail maintenance and just trail work in general in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park of western North Carolina. So this came of that experience for me, so I hope you enjoy it. Mali Sajo. So this song comes from Mali, which is one of the other 4 countries other than the 2 that I studied in, where you can find the Kora being played. So in total, the 6 are Gambia, Senegal, Mali, Guinea, 5 is Guinea-Bissau, and then you got Burkina Faso. And all 6 countries are tucked about 10 degrees north of the equator, about as far west onto the African continent as you can get. So Mali Sajo. So the country's Mali. The word Sajo, excuse me, is the word for the hippopotamus. And so this is a folk story coming from the southwest most region of Mali, known as Bafulabe. And it tells the story, a folk story, if you will, of a woman that was said to have fallen in love with a hippopotamus and it not end rather well. Not a true story, though. Nunkaman John, and it's named after Nunkaman John Kamara. And he was one who was very close allies with the very first emperor of the Mandinka back in the 1200s. So the very first Kora was built in the 1700s, but a lot of the music goes back a lot further than that, to the founding of the Mandinka Empire in the mid-1200s. And so this song comes from around that time. And so Nunkaman John was very close with the first emperor of the Mandinka, and this person's name was Sunjata Keita. And so the two of them were putting their heads together to set out the blueprint for the initial stages of their empire expansion. So Sunjata dedicated this song to Nunkaman John. Thank you. All right, so there's a lot that goes into building a Kora. And when someone builds one, they work from the bottom going up towards the top. So right at the very base, the round shell that you see down there is half of a calabash. And so the calabash grows in the ground just like a pumpkin. So you have to pick it off the stem, and then you would cut it in half with a giant handsaw, just going right down the middle of it. At that point, you've got now 2 halves of calabash with a lot of seeds and a lot of wet, gooey stuff that's in there. So you got to scrape all that out. And those get dried in the sun for a couple of weeks, up to a month, just depending on the time of year that you're building the Kora. If there's moisture there, it's just going to take longer to dry out. And then you would stretch a wet cow skin over the open half of that calabash, and that gets nailed to the backside with upholstery tacks. And it's very important to put the skin on while it's still wet, because if the skin is slightly dry, it's probably going to crack, which means that you just have to tear the skin off and put another one on. So the night before you want to start building, you soak that animal skin in a bucket of water, and you bring it out the next day, and then you wring it out of all the water with your hands as best you possibly can. You lay the skin flat on the ground, and then you take the rim of your calabash and you just lay it right up and over the top of the skin. And then you fold the skin up and over the round side to where it's covering the top. And I say that because initially there's a lot more animal skin that you're working with at that point. A lot of it's been cut off at this point. So once your skin's up and over the round side there, you would take a knife and you'd make holes into the animal skin about where the upholstery tacks are going to go. These holes that you're making, you might make about 75, maybe 80 holes in the back. And these holes that you're making are actually for rope. You need to take a big, long piece of rope, maybe 75 feet long or more, and string it through all those holes, tightening, which then tighten the animal skin on the front sides, kind of like you might see on a drum. And it's never played like that as a percussive instrument, but you still want the skin nice and tight because during a weather change, I should say anytime just about, the skin it'll react to whatever the weather's doing. So we just had some rain move in today. So if there's ever moisture in the air like that, that skin's gonna absorb some of that moisture in the air, and then the skin loosens as a result. And when the skin loosens, the bridge, which is being held by all the plucking strings there, all 22 of them, will then sag right into the animal skin. And when that happens, all 22 of your plucking strings are going to go along for the ride, and they're going to loosen, and the pitch is going to lower. And then when the sun comes back out and the air is a bit drier, then the skin tightens. So that's the opposite effects, and the bridge kind of goes out that way, tightening all the strings to raise the pitch. So the tighter you get the skin on at the very beginning means the less movement you're going to have there with the bateau, was what they call the bridge there. And so once you've got your rope through all the holes back here again, that's when you go in and just nail in your upholstery tacks one at a time, going completely around the circle. And then you take that knife and then you cut just behind the upholstery tacks to take off all the rope, all the leftover animal hides, and that will bring the calabash, the actual calabash itself, back into view, which is exactly what you're looking at right now, and that orangish color on the back side. From there, you would put your 2 handlebars and your crossbar in, so the handlebars being on either side of my right hand currently. And then right behind those handlebars is a crossbar. So you've got to make cuts into the animal skin for each of those to slide through. You have to take a hammer and pound them through a bit. And then you just set that aside for a couple of weeks. Just let it dry out, maybe even in the direct sunlight if you can. In the meantime, you can prepare the neck to be attached to the Kora. So the neck being the longest piece of wood on the instrument that I'm holding right now. So you have to find the long piece of wood and you have to mill it down into a circular shape. And then you wrap each of your individual tuning rings around that neck. They're also cowhides called konso in Mandinka. So with the konso, you have 1 per string, so there's 22 of them, and you cut them long and narrow. And once you've got each of them in front of you, you would need to take a pair of scissors, cut right down the middle of each of them until you hit the midpoint, so that now on either side of that midpoint you have 2 halves of rope that are loose, and so you would cross braid those around the neck in order to get the tuners on. So then once they dry, you put the neck through the calabash, so there's actually 3 holes total that you cut into the calabash, and 2 of those are for the neck. So there's one at the top, another at the bottom, and then your third and your largest hole right there. That one's there for 2 reasons. The first is so that your sound can come out, and the second is so that money can go in. And it's used as a cash deposit for very historical reasons that are such a huge part of how society operates around the people who play these, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So your neck is now through, your tuners are on, and the last thing you've got to do is put your strings on. So at the very bottom, holding everything together, is an iron ring. It's a welded piece of rebar, and you drill a hole to the bottom of your neck for that. And you wrap your anchor strings around the iron ring, and then finally go into your plucking strings, tying them off to the anchor strings, and then lastly they go up to each of the tuners that are along the neck. And they get wrapped around each tuner about 4 times, maybe 5, and then tied off at the ends. And then as you're moving the tuners up the neck to begin with, you're starting to put tension on the strings. And that's the point where you go ahead and put the bridge on, or the bateau. And then right behind the bateau is it's like a piece of particle board that's wrapped in pink cloth, and that prevents that bridge from tearing up the animal skin. And so this kora is considered a traditional kora. It's been built like this since around 1920. This very one was built by my teacher in Gambia, Moriba Kuyate, in 2018, and he taught me how to build them as well. So right around 1920, they made a very serious modification to the initial model of kora from the 1720s. And so what you're looking at here, I think we've mentioned everything at this point. The calabash, the cow skin. Your wood comes from a tree called kano, which is only in northwest Africa, but south of the Sahara Desert. And then your cowhide tuning rings. And then lastly, with your plucking strings here, these are monofilament fishing line. So anywhere between 30-pound and 200-pound test gauge fishing line. And so that was the biggest change that came about in the 1920s, because before that, before the fishing line was available over there, for those plucking strings, they would use antelope skin. And once the fishing line became available, the transition over to it was very quick, because the fishing line is so much easier to work with. Like, it just stays in tune a lot better, doesn't break nearly as often, and just cuts down on the overall maintenance of the kora by a lot. Nowadays, though, a lot of kora builders will use, instead of conso, instead of these cowhide tuning rings along the neck, they'll use the same kind of tuning pegs that you would find on a guitar. So you just have to drill the pegs into the neck and string them up, and you're just twisting the pegs like you would a guitar. So. All right, this one's called Alalake. This one's going back to the 1700s. Speaking of good work, and that's when good work has been complete. Whoever may be responsible for this work could be celebrated or even rewarded in some cases. Alalake. Thank you. Jati, it's a song about peace and hospitality and the importance of taking care of each other, looking after one another. I learned this one in Senegal a couple of years ago from my teacher, Yusufa Sissoko. Thank you. Kanafama. This is a tune of the attempt of overcoming the worst of your fears and the challenges that may be associated with that.
petite dunia. Kana fama, kana kara, kana fama, fora sonte petite dunia. Kana kara, kana fama, fora sonte petite dunia. Kana fama, kana kara, kana fama, fora sonte petite dunia. Kana fama, kana kara, kana fama, sonte petite dunia. Thank you. The people playing Kora in West Africa are part of what many consider to be a class system that exists. And so, historically, if you were born in one of the 6 countries where the Kora is, your last name would determine the type of work that you did in life. So every single work is associated to a family lineage, maybe even up to 5 for one particular work. And so the people playing these are no different. The term given to them is the word griot, spelled G-R-I-O-T, griot. And a griot is not only a musician, but they are hereditary historians whose responsibility it is to carry forth 800 years worth of history going all the way back to the start of the Mandinka Empire in the mid-1200s. And so the Kora is a vehicle for them to do just this. When I was in West Africa, it was rare to see the Kora played solo. It was usually joined by other instruments, such as the balafon and the ngoni. So a balafon is a wooden xylophone that's played with one mallet in each hand. And then the ngoni is more like a lute. It's about that long, played more like a guitar. It has 6 strings, just like a guitar does. And you actually have to fret the strings on those, as opposed to the Kora, where it's just open plucking. And you're only using 4 fingers to play the Kora, I should say. Your thumbs and your index fingers on both hands. So 4 fingers, 22 strings. And so you'd see the Kora used a lot at both weddings and naming ceremonies. And the music was sort of like the after party. And it was a very ceremonious occasion, celebratory. And unlike the actual ceremony that happened usually in the afternoon, you didn't have to have an invite to come hear the music. And so if you heard it from a little ways away, you could just go into wherever it was being held. Sometimes it was in the home of either the newlyweds or the newborn child that the ceremony was dedicated to. But occasionally, if the family felt there was going to be a lot of interest from the general public, they may go as far as to rent out the soccer field of one of the local elementary schools so that people could get up and dance, which they really liked to do. Because for these, your bands were electrified, and you had a mix of the traditional instruments like the Kora, ngoni, and balafon, but you also had electric guitar, electric bass, drum sets, electric keyboards, and they'd all be plugged in. And it carried more of a feeling of a rock concert, especially if you had traditional drums in your group like djembe and sabar, which the djembe is a hand drum. It's a cow skin head that goes over a wooden frame, an hourglass shape. And then your sabar drums, more common in Gambia and Senegal, have about 3 different lengths, and they're all very narrow. And they're played with one hand and one stick, so the sound really carries as a result. And the bands, they really had to engage the audience in order to earn their keep that night. The way that you would see this play out is that eventually the band's going to come across a song about someone who lived a long time ago, perhaps anywhere between the 1200s and the 1700s. And a lot of these songs are still played today. And so the lead singer comes up and starts telling the audience about who this person is, where they were born, and how their life trajectory or their path in life may have influenced that family lineage, and how that may have even played into society on a larger scale. Because a lot of these songs are named after people who were really well known. Former presidents, army generals, people who fought in battles. That's just a few examples of many. And so they're talking about this person for a good 10 to 15 minutes while the song is just going on the whole time in the backgrounds. And then they're going to try to figure out if anyone in the audience is related to this person, like maybe a 7th or 8th generation descendant, ancestor of this person. And they're then saying to the people out there, who could be anywhere between 200 and 300 people, if not more, they're saying, anyone out there, based on what I've shared with you about this person over the last little while, it is now time. If you have a family tie, it is now time for you to come up and show your respects in the form of cash payments. And so I'd be looking up. I'd be sitting next to the band or even behind them a little ways, and I'd be looking out to this sea of people, and I'd see maybe 5 or 6 stand up, walk towards the band as they're reaching into their pockets or purse or jacket even, and if they had any cash in there, they may walk right up to the Kora player and just start putting cash into that sound hole there, right into that big hole right there. They may even hand it right to the Jeli Muso, which is the female singer, otherwise known as the female griot on stage. So Jeli is another word for griot. Muso means female. And historically, only women would sing. They were forbidden from playing any of these instruments until about 25 years ago. So that's when things really started to change. And nowadays, I feel like there's more women, especially younger girls, learning from their elders and actually having encouragement from their families to do so, which is really a huge change and has been really cool to see in each of the visits and how that's progressed that have gone over there. So yeah, people are walking up with their cash. They may even hand it right to the Jeli Muso. Or furthermore, they may walk up to other band members who, at some point, they're going to be working up a sweat. So you may have someone on stage have currency, like the local currency, pasted to their sweaty forehead before it would just like stick there for a few seconds before it would drop down to the ground. Or someone may have a cap removed and have some cash put in the cap. And as it was getting put back on their head, you see some of the cash just kind of sticking on their neck before it would drop down to the grounds. I feel like this was a playful way for people to show their appreciation for a very central custom in society, and that is that anytime one of these hereditary historians, one of these griots, shares information with someone about their family past, that person's then going to feel the responsibility, if not the societal obligation, to then give financial support to them because they've been in this role as the safekeepers going all the way back to the mid-1200s and passing down all of this from one generation to the next orally is how it's been done. And I feel like most people still want this to continue for the future generations. So I'm hoping that y'all can help me out with this next tune. This one's called Tira Makan. Tira Makan is named after Tira Makan Trail, right? And he was one of the first people gathering people together to form the Mandinka armies in the mid-1200s. So this is a battle song. And there's a call and there's a response. I'm going to sing the call, and together we're going to sing the response. It's 3 words in Mandinka, so the same 3 get repeated all the time. So these 3 words in English, what they mean is, the enemy was not successful at piercing Tira Makan with a sword. It's a loose translation. But to start, could you please say after me each of the 3 words, one at a time? The first word is Susa. Second word, Rejo. Third word is the name of the person, Tira Makan. Tira Makan. Good. Now say Susa, Rejo, Tira Makan. Good. All right. So I'm going to step down to the Kora next, because I'm going to sing those 3 words to you. And I would like you to sing them right back to me. In fact, when I sing it, we're just going to, and then you sing it after me, we're just going to pass it back and forth to each other for a little bit, just to get the feeling of what this call and response is going to feel like here. It goes. Susare jotira makan, 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 susare jotira makan. Yeah, that's it. You got it. All right, so that's the response, and there's 3 call lines that'll get us there. The first one is Amuru Ibang Tiramakan, which means the enemy tried to pierce Tiramakan with the sword, and that's where we come in with Susa Rejo Tiramakan. I'll then say Kelke Muru Ibang Tiramakan. So Kelke is in the same army as Tiramakan is. He's warning him that the enemy's sword is about to pierce him. And then we come in again, Susa, Rejo, Tiramakan. The last call line, Ifa, Tiramakan, Iba, Tiramakan is the father and the mother of Tiramakan are wishing for his safety, his safe return home. And we'll do it again, Susa, Rejo, Tiramakan. And that repeats both call and response, so in total it's a round of 4. So let's give it a try. It goes. Muru yebang tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, kelke muru yebang tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, ipa tiramakan, ifa tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan, ipa tiramakan, ifa tiramakan, susare jo tiramakan. Good. Let's mix it with the Kora now for Tiramakan. Thank you. That was really good. Thank you all for that. So just a little bit about how I got into all this. I first heard the Kora at a music event in my hometown of Olympia, Washington, the States, which is about 40 minutes south of where we live now in Tacoma. And so that night, I heard the Kora played by Kane Mathis. He had been to West Africa to study quite a few times at that point, to Gambia. And I had no idea that that was going to be the night that I would fall in love with the sound of the Kora and transition from being a lifelong clarinet player over to the Kora. So it's not the most common jump from one instrument to another. I talked with Kane after the show, and I started going up to his place in Seattle to take lessons once every couple of months for about a year and a half. Then when I went back to school to finish up my undergraduate degree through my school, also in my hometown, I was able to receive a study contract to go to Gambia and learn the Kora to earn credit towards my music degree here in the U.S. And so Kane put me in touch with the teachers that he studied with in Gambia. And their names are Moriba Kuyate, and he's the son of the late Malami Jabate. And I worked with Malami for my first 2 visits, and then he passed away about 12 years ago now. And then in Senegal, I went back in 2018 to Gambia to stay with Moriba. And then in 2023, took my first trip to Senegal to study with Youssoufa Sissoko and his son Mamadou Sissoko. And that visit was actually through a grant, thanks to the North Carolina Arts Council. So that funded most of the trip to go and stay with them and learn new tunes. And so when I was there, I would receive anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of instruction per day. So I could have a lesson in the morning, afternoon, and evening most days, and there was a lot of practice time in between. I got to stay in their extended family compound with 20 to 30 of their extended family members, which is how most people live there. And honestly, I was taken care of as if I was one of the family. I got to live alongside of them as they were doing their daily activities. You know, I'd go to the market and pick things up, food items to take home, which would later get cooked. I got to learn how to cook some of the traditional meals myself. And the fact that they were so supportive as they were in being able to take someone like me in from across the Atlantic Ocean and show me the Kora, teach me the language, whether it's Mandinka in Gambia or in Senegal, it was Wolof or French. And it speaks, it's something I hold in very high regard when I'm going around and sharing this. And so to have their support and encouragement to do that is truly a gift, and one that I thank them for. And with that, I'd like to thank you for coming this afternoon. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and give you one more song. And before we do that, I'll let you know that I've got CDs available for sale here. There's 2 different albums. The orange album is $15, and the white album is $20. The orange one was released about 9 years ago, and the white one was released last year. They're all solo, mixture of vocals and instrumental. You can pay just about any way that you want. If you want to use cash or check, there's a small plastic tub on the table, so you can just put those forms of payment there. You can also use a credit card or a debit card. You need to come see me for that. Or if you want to use a digital payment like Venmo or PayPal, there's QR codes there on the table that you can scan to pay that way. If you're like me and you don't have a CD player anymore, not even in your early 2000s car, there's both those CDs are available digitally through a site called Bandcamp, and on the very far right of the table, there's a QR code that you can scan and just download the albums right there onto your phone. Or if you want to do it on your computer at home, you can just go to my website, SeanGaskell.com, and the link is there for you to do that. And then to the far left, there's an email list. I always send out notifications for the next time that I'm coming through the area, so if you'd like to receive a notification of a future show around here, feel free to sign up for the lists. And then the very far left, there are more QR codes for the social media sites that I post content to. So Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube is what I'm mostly using. And then I just want to take a moment. I think he's visible to both of us, but Sean was the one who invited me to come this afternoon, so if we could all give a hand to Sean. And again, before the last song, I did want to ask if there are any questions that you'd like to ask. Yeah, go ahead. Not this one. I feel like on others that I've seen there are, but this one's just natural gorge. Yeah, so. All right, cool. I'm just gonna do a quick little tune-up while we're doing that. All right, I think we're ready for some more questions.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Can you hear me through the mic? Okay, anybody have questions?
Two questions. Do you ever use picks, or is it just your finger?
Just the fingers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other question is, can you explain a little bit more about the 11 strings on one side and the 11 strings on the other?
Yeah, sure. So like the deepest, like the lowest sounding notes on the instrument are closest to me, and the highest pitched ones are furthest away. So your thumbs are playing mostly the low and the mid range, and your index fingers are playing the higher register. And so to go from low to high, left side of the bridge, first four strings closest to you are the lowest on the Kora. And so once you're to that fourth note, to keep going higher, you have to go across the bridge in single intervals as you're getting higher in pitch. Alright, so, and it's going to be kind of hard to see from where y'all are at, but 7-note diatonic scale, so and then your octave, and then same thing. So that's kind of the layout. Yeah.
I just love the sound, but I would like to know the value of what something like that costs or is worth.
Yeah, it depends on your negotiating skills. And I say that because every single one of these items that the Kora uses, you're gonna find from a different vendor. So like you're literally gonna go to a farmer for the cow skin. You're gonna go to, well, you'll probably go to a farmer for the calabash too, honestly. Go to a woodworker for the handlebars and the neck, and then there's someone selling just fishing gear. So I think there's 4 vendors right there. And the costs really vary from just depending on the time of year. But like also as a foreigner, people do that right away. Obviously, I stick out there, and so I think because of that, the asking price was a little bit higher, and I definitely got better with my negotiating skills over time. But I had more about do most of it. Because I stayed with a family of griots, with a Kora builder in the family who was my teacher in Moribah, and the fact that I was paying room and board on top of that to be there. I probably paid somewhere around $300. But if you're gonna order one up from someone over there and have it thrown on an airplane, and all the packaging and whatnot, you're easily looking at over $1,000 to get one over. Yeah.
Have you ever had the opportunity to play with a symphony or anything, that instrument?
I actually haven't had an invitation for myself, but I do know other Kora players from West Africa that have. Yeah, and it's really cool. Yeah, Balakay Sissoko, I think, was one that came to mind who has done a lot in that regard, coming over from Mali. Yeah.
One last question, maybe? Anybody?
And if not, y'all are more than welcome to come up and take a close look at the Kora on your way out. If you have any further questions at that point, I'll just be packing up my gear here. If you want to take a picture of the Kora, if you want to take a picture of me in the Kora, or you in the Kora, or me and you in the Kora, it's totally up to you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and give you another song that I came up with. I call this one Smoky Mountain Sunsets.